Nice. That piano music still gets me jacked up. That's kind of the thing now where it's like that makes me want to run through just an absolute brick wall. So thank you everybody for tuning in to Unicorn Finders. We're a little different this week, going afternoon on a Friday. So that's a little different, but we did that to get our dude on, Jamon Holmgren, from the West Coast. Jamon, thanks for joining, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Taylor. Really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. And so again, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, who don't know what Unicorn Finders is, first off, if you Google us, you're going to get some weird Google searches. Apologize for that. But the point for the Unicorn Finders is to find the unicorn in both business and relationships. Also, you're wondering where our third unicorn is, Dan. And Dan Thompson is busy with work today. And so Dan is attending to real work. Yeah. Dan is attending to making sure CTOs get their people placed. And so that is why he is not with us. So again, I've admired Jamon Holmgren from afar on Twitter, especially around his cadence around people leadership. And so again, we talk about what is a unicorn. What does that look like? Really, I think Jamon is a unicorn in regards to people leadership and relationships, especially what I've seen. And so today, what we're going to talk is open source leadership. And when Jamon and I were emailing back and forth, I was like, "What is this?" And he goes, "You know what? That's a great question to start out with." So, Jamon, before we go any further, man, give us a background about you, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Taylor and Jake. I really appreciate it. It's kind of funny because I actually didn't know this was going to be live until a couple days ago, and you tweeted about it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a live thing. Yeah. Totally cool.
Like to surprise people.
Yeah. No, I have no problem with that at all. My background, I grew up on the Oregon coast. So I understand Jake's from Oregon as well. Yay. Yeah. Oregonians checking in here. Exactly. I currently live in Washington State, but I'm still pretty close to Oregon. I'm right across the river from Portland, Oregon.
That's cool. Yeah. I'm in North Carolina. So,
that's a little further away. Yeah, I haven't gotten too far. In fact, I drove through my hometown just the other week when we were headed over to Seaside out on the Oregon coast.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I grew up over there in a small town, mostly kind of blue collar roots. My dad owned an excavation company, and we kind of, I was kind of surrounded by logging and construction and all of those types of things. But I always loved computers. When my dad owned a business, so he had a computer to do his books, and so I got fascinated by that. And then just to kind of speed through it, I spent some time. I went to college for one semester and dropped out, just a small community college, and then I went to. I started working. I started working in the construction field, and then I ended up just through a few different jumps. I started doing some home design. I did like 3D drafting and modeling. Yeah. And then from there, I ended up doing some web design eventually. And that turned into my business in 2005.
That's awesome. So what do you do now?
I'm a CTO and co-founder of Infinite Red. I started my business in 2005. It was a consultancy, and I still do a consultancy, but about 5 years ago, I merged with Todd Worth, and my current co-founders or business partners, Todd Worth and Gant Laborde, we run the company together. They had a similar agency based out of San Francisco, and of course I was out of Portland, so we decided to merge at a certain point, and we've been running it together since then. We have about 25 people spread all across the US. We're fully remote. So my job is as CTO, I do our technical sales. So as people come to us and say, hey, we need React or React Native development, they talk to me. We do a video call, just, chat about their project, and I get them hooked up. And then the other part of it is I lead our technical team, helping whether I'm pairing with an engineer or, helping with training or recruiting, getting people on board. I think you folks know something about that. This is part of the job, trying to get, trying to do our grow the business as much as we can, and of course doing all the owner stuff too. So that's kind of my primary stuff.
That's awesome, man. All right, so we'll go and dive in to the topic today. And obviously, I'm going to start with the question. Hey, Jamon, what is open source leadership? Because obviously you proposed that topic. I thought it was fascinating. And so give me kind of a 30,000 foot view for the people who are viewing right now, which again, we have a lot. Again, if you are viewing right now, please comment in the chat where you're viewing from. Would love to know kind of where you're tuning in from. So please drop it in the chat. But Jamon, for the people who are viewing right now, how would you describe open source leadership at a 30,000 foot view?
So, obviously you have to start with what is open source in general. And I think most people watching this probably have either a pretty good idea or at least some conception of what it is. These are libraries that have been built by various software engineers and they've been released to the public. And then people can, submit patches. They can use it for free, but then they can also submit patches and say, hey, I need this additional functionality, or I found a bug and here's a patch, here's some changes to the code to make this library better. Generally speaking, they're doing it for various reasons. We can get into that, eventually here, but
sure.
But you can't necessarily, it's not quite like Wikipedia where you just edit and then everybody sees your edits and brings it. It's a little more dangerous to do that because, this is software running on your computer. You don't want to just let anybody come in and make any change they want anytime. Even though you can revert stuff. We have Git, which is version, control and stuff. So we can revert things. So instead we usually use systems like GitHub and Bitbucket and GitLab to manage the open source. And there are maintainers. There are people that have commit access. They can go in there. So you submit a pull request. Anybody can submit a pull request usually. And when that pull request comes in, someone's got to review it and see, is this worth including? What changes need to be made to it? And additionally, there's usually more than one person that has commit access. And so anytime that you have a situation where you have multiple people together in a team, then you need some leadership. You need some leadership of some sort. Somebody to set the vision and kind of help, help guide the team, help make decisions, help, just kind of keep the communication flowing, all of those things. So I've found myself in various leadership roles over the course of my career, whether I've, been seeking them out or not. I just tend to find myself there. And so that's definitely happened in the open source world for me as well.
I love that.
How is it that, so if there's an open source project,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find something that you're interested in enough to invest your time into making sure that it keeps going forward? And how do you kind of checklist that? And two, how do you kind of just take the reins from, to make that happen, in a very remote, very open world? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jake. So I would say usually it has to do with the work that I'm doing right now, whether it's for a client or if I'm doing something myself, for myself. I have some need, there's so when I first got into open source, I was doing a lot of Ruby, and there would be various, libraries that I was using, but they wouldn't, maybe they wouldn't have a certain feature. I know there was one that worked with an old system, cloud system called Parse, which was subsequently bought by Facebook. It's sort of like Firebase, and it had some really cool features, but I needed pagination or something. I can't remember exactly, but so I went and made those changes to the library, and I submitted them to that library. And the guy who was maintaining it was like, "Hey, you want to help me out? You're submitting pull requests to this here. Why don't you try this out?" And then from there, I had another need. I needed a navigation library for mobile apps. So I needed to be able to, very easily create new screens and push new screens on and pop screens off and pull up modals and things like that. So I actually created my own wrapper around the built-in iOS Cocoa Touch libraries, and it was really cool, and people liked it. So I found myself as, sort of the leader there. But that was a situation where I just needed it, and I built something that I liked, something that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I was the main maintainer for that for as long as I was still using it.
Yeah.
Eventually did hand it off. In terms of taking over, there are often, I actually just did take over a new library, not a new library, but a library that's new to me in terms of maintenance. That's called MobX State Tree. And we've been using it for years at Infinite Red. It's a great library. But the guy who created it, Michel Westrate, he is a friend of mine, and he works at Facebook now, and he is focusing mainly on his other libraries that he's doing. He asked for maintainers, and we have an interest in making sure that MobX State Tree stays really viable. So I offered to take over as a primary maintainer of that library.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's
So let me ask you this, like, so people probably watching. So let's dumb it down real quick, real fast.
Okay.
People are watching. What the heck is open source?
Yeah.
Right. So just explain that real fast for people, because
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, my mom's watching from South Carolina. She's like, "The heck did he just say?" Right. So let's talk about open source. What is it, real fast? Give me the rundown.
First off, hi, Taylor's mom. Taylor's a cool guy, by the way. So good job.
Thanks, Jerry. I'll pay you later.
Open source. So we have software, of course, software that runs the world. It's code. It's lines of code, and it's written in different coding languages. So you might have a language like Ruby, which often runs, websites and things like that. You have Swift, which runs iOS apps. You have Kotlin or Java, two languages that run on Android apps. There's other ones as well, C++, JavaScript, of course, tons of JavaScript out there. We do a ton of JavaScript.
Magic. We love it.
What we're on right now is powered by JavaScript right now.
Yep.
And a lot of the software that's kind of, you don't want to necessarily have software. You don't want to have to write the software from scratch every single time. That doesn't make sense. Right. Sort of like with an automobile, you're not going to design a brand new alternator every time you create a car. You're going to find one that works with the right specifications. You're going to plug it in, and you're going to make sure everything, bolts in and connects and stuff. And then it works. It does its job. And just like that, you have open source libraries. These are open source, meaning that anybody can look at it, anybody can see it, anybody can use it. What's really cool about that, why would you give this away for free? Why wouldn't you sell it like an alternator? Why wouldn't you sell that? Software is different because it's digital. So you don't have distribution costs. You don't have to manufacture it. It's just there. Once it's created, it's there, and anybody can download it. And the benefit is that once it's open source, like, hey, this alternator, like, it's great, but it needs a new bolt in this spot right here to hold it more securely. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. And so you can just be like, okay, I'm going to redesign that, or I'm going to add that little feature, and I'm going to put it in. And then anybody who buys that alternator from now on is going to have that new feature. Yeah. So it's this collaboration across software engineers. It's pretty unique to software development. I can't really think of too many analogs outside of software where people do this sort of collaboration for free. It's just kind of an emergent behavior that has come out of some of the early open source was like, Linux and some of this stuff. And
it was to rebel against Microsoft.
Right. Exactly. Because like everybody had their own proprietary code and you couldn't do anything with it. And Linus Torvalds was like, no, I'm just going to give it away for free. It was a very revolutionary thing, but it made a big difference in the software world.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about all this open source. Like, to me, it's like the Wild West.
Yeah.
Right? It can be the Wild West.
Yeah.
Like Wild West, like Will Smith, get jiggy with it, Wild West. I don't know where that came from. I do apologize for anybody who's listening. It's Friday. It's Friday afternoon. I'm becoming unhinged. So how do you, as a leader, because developers by nature are tinkerers, right? They're problem solvers.
Yeah.
How do you keep, as a leader, teams on the course to finishing projects without letting them kind of go all over the place within an open source ecosystem?
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult thing to do when you have a team that's basically unpaid, right? They're volunteers. And like any volunteer organization, anytime that things get tough, they can just disappear. They can just move along. There's no contracts holding them there. These are people that are just contributing out of their own goodwill. And that can be actually a very difficult thing to navigate as an open source maintainer. Motivating the team to complete something. It can be exciting though. It can actually be an exciting thing to be a part of something that is going to maybe make a big splash when it goes out there.
Yeah.
I remember building my big first open source library and putting it out there, and it hit the front page of Hacker News. And it was like, this is a big deal. Like, people are looking at this. This is like, boom, it was insane. And so that was motivating in and of itself. And then I had a guy come in, Mark Rickert. Hi, Mark, if you're watching. He needed it because he's a skydiver. And so he was building like all these skydiving apps and stuff. And
of course,
apps while you're using skydiving.
You know what? He released one of them while he was in free fall one time. He has a video. Yes, Mark's the crazy guy that will do stuff like that.
There's got to be a deploying to production joke in that somewhere, like on a weekend.
I know, right?
I think that would fall more into like hotfix type category.
It's something else. Mark, he works for me now. He's fantastic. He's leading a big project that's wrapping up next week. At least the first phase is doing a fantastic job. But this was before I had even met Todd and Gant and all those guys. This was like early on, and he basically started contributing all these changes to my library, and I'm like, who's this Mark Rickert guy? Man, he's contributing all this cool code, Yeah. And so I didn't even ask him. I just gave him access to the library as a contributor. So he gets an email like, you are now, basically an owner of this library. Cool. Just like, because I trusted him at that point. He was clearly doing things that were, in accordance to what we were trying to do, and he was contributing good code, and he was really fast about stuff. And if I would ask him to make a change, he would do it right away. I just trusted him at that point. And so it was no big deal. Like, he became a core contributor at that point. And that can be motivating, but people will come on for a while and then they'll drop off. Life happens, and that, you just kind of have to play it by ear,
I know that I've heard of so many of my friends have gotten jobs just from open source projects. Yeah. Just exactly that. Hey, we met or started companies or been a part of something, right. Realized how well we worked together, had an idea or came up with an idea and started doing something. And, it's cool. It's like that. We should have added that to our remote form of networking podcast we talked about last week, because that is a really real thing. And then you have this. I remember when I first got into tech, and someone was trying to, and I, not knowing anything, and people were trying to explain to me how Red Hat made money. Mm-hmm. And it just like, I couldn't wrap my mind around. I'm like, so it's other people's things that they're stabilizing and making them secure, so that way the people that don't trust the people built them in the first place can pay someone else to buy to build their banking software or whatever. And I was just like, my mind just doesn't wrap around this. I don't understand. It just broke me, Yeah. But obviously they've done well. There's many others like them, that have done that similar business model, right? Yeah.
But, for sure. And we at Infinite Red have kind of a unique business model when it comes to the, I don't know about unique, but we have another angle on it. Backing up a bit, that's how I met Todd and Gant. We all three of us had, along with another guy that was an initial co-founder, Ken Miller, we all had libraries that fit into a particular ecosystem, and they all kind of they weren't really competing in a way. They were kind of like complementary. So people would use my library and they would use Gant's libraries. He had many, and Todd's library was fantastic, and it fit in really well. And Ken's was really good. So like Ken had a database thing, and Todd had like a view layout system, and I had a screen management system, and Gant had all these cool like utilities that you could add on, various small kind of filler things that would work, as well as I don't know. He does tons of stuff, and So we looked at like, okay, people are
He
using
likes
all
Will
of these.
Smith, by the way, as you can tell from the comments.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's where he gets his inspiration. Shout out Will Smith. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Todd had the idea, hey, let's put these together into like a cohesive library.
Yeah.
One thing, sort of like the Rails, the Ruby on Rails, but for the technology we were using. And and this was before any of us had worked together or anything like that. So we started working on that. Now we had met at a conference, and I got a chance to speak at that conference, as did Gant, as did Ken, as did Todd, because of my library, because of the library I had released. And it was the first tech conference I'd ever been to, and I was the first speaker.
Cool.
Not recommended, to just stroll in and give a talk before you'd ever been to one. But it went well, and I got to know everybody. It was really cool. I'm just from this little town in Oregon. Like, this was like, to go down to San Francisco and give a talk was a big deal for me. So, but we started working together on this thing. It was called Red Potion, and we put things together. They worked really well. There's a lot of work that all four of us put into making it all happen. I would give most of the credit to Todd. He was kind of the glue that kind of pulled it all together, and that's kind of an analog to our relationship anyway. Todd's the glue within. He brought together for the merger. He brought us all together and said, hey, well, we did this with the open source stuff. What about our businesses? Could we pull all those things together? Gant had his own business, although he was working for Todd as well. And so we pulled that all together to be the company that is today. Our way of leveraging open source, it comes from that kind of DNA that we had back then, where we were always, involved in open source. So people know us because of a library that Gant made called Ignite. And it is basically a boilerplate that allows you to spin up a new React Native app really quickly, and it shaves off 2 to 4 weeks off the front end of your project because all these things are. What's that?
Yeah, we've used it. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool thing, and Gant did a great job, and I maintain it now. I'm the primary maintainer of that. And
so if you have any problems, Jake, just put in an IT ticket to Jamon, and Jamon will follow up with you.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I'll just pass it on to Gant and say, this library is your fault anyway. You fix it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way that it works is people hear about us through the open source, and then they're like, hey, we need some work done. And so
doing podcasts with Unicorn Finders.
That's the other strategy. Yeah, exactly. This is our big break here.
Yeah. Both are not make both apps, so it's great. Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask you this, Jamon. So from a leadership perspective, right? I'm going off the cuff a little bit here because I want to know what your unicorn. I guess what is your unicorn thing that you bring to the table? Like what? Because I've watched you, I've admired you from afar. What do you think leaders in IT need to be mindful of right now during the pandemic, but also moving forward, not only from a people side, but from a tech side? Because I really want to get that from you, obviously, over the next few minutes. Yeah.
So I think that people need different things from leaders at different times, different challenges. Sometimes it's setting a vision. Sometimes it's, the ability to recognize opportunities and challenges and being opportunistic about things. Sometimes they need leaders who can say no, who can say this is not who we are and not what we want. All of these things come into play, and they tend to come into play in different areas, different scenarios, different challenges. This year we have a very overwhelming existential threat to our company, and it's not unique to us. A lot of people are in the same situation. So what the company needed from us was for us to recenter and say, this is who we are. This is what we're all about. This is how we're going to weather the storm. And this is the plan. We came up with a plan. We posted it to the whole company. We talked about it with everybody, and we said, we're going to, put on hold all the big plans and everything we have. Our plan is to reduce as much, work stress as possible, because there's going to be a ton of outside of work stress, right? Yeah. We don't want to contribute to that. So we're going to be like, like very like steady, solid. We're going to try to make it so that we don't have to lose anybody. No layoffs if we can help it. We're going to really focus hard on our core competency, which is React and React Native development. We're going to just really focus on that. Like if there were other ideas, other things out there that we still want to do, but we're not going to try to pursue them in 2020. And I make a practice of reaching out every week or two to the whole team individually in DMs and say, hey, how you doing? What's your stress level, 0 to 10? And then, how can we help? It often, in the past there would be, I've done this for a long time. And in the past, a lot of the stress might be work related, and that still does happen to some extent, but a lot of the stress these days, there's just a baseline level of stress that's just due to the pandemic and dealing with all of that. And of course, politics and everything else that kind of come along with this year. So from that standpoint, it's been, I think what our team has needed from us is just steady leadership and recentering, knowing what we need to do and really focusing the whole team on that and looking for, just stability really in the end so that there's a lower level of stress throughout the whole company. We don't want to do that forever because that would probably reduce our upside. Some plans we have, some things we want to do. Sometimes you have to step out and do something outside of your comfort zone. But 2020 is not the year we felt to do that.
Hey, that's a lot of awareness and empathy, right? I mean, I don't think that's stated enough from a leader. I mean, you basically said, okay, we're willing to take a step back this year to help our employees, to maintain morale, so we can take 1 or 2 or 6 steps forward the following year. And honestly, I don't think many leaders are willing to admit that. So props to you on that. Yeah,
well, I have to thank you. I appreciate that. And I have to refer a lot of props over to Todd as well. He's kind of the emotional leader of the company in a lot of ways.
The emotional leader.
He gets very emotional. No,
so do I. Jake and I are very emotional individuals. So.
Yeah. No,
you're crying.
No, it's cool because we each have our own kind of areas that we're strong in, and but that's something that I think we all three of us believe very strongly in is this idea of having empathy. And we wanted to build a company that we would want to work at, and we wouldn't want to work at a company that would treat their employees otherwise. There's always like realities of business, right? You have to make hard decisions sometimes. But no matter what we do, we try to think about it in terms of, how do we want to be treated? How do we want to do this? And what's needed right now? And you know what? Sometimes we don't feel like stepping up. Sometimes it'd be nice to just be like, okay, I'm just going to go and let somebody else deal with this. But when you're the owner, there's nobody else to pass the buck to. Luckily, I did this for 10 years by myself, and that was super stressful. Having a couple of business partners really makes a big difference. And not only that, but the whole team buys into this concept. They really do. It's like I can find support from anybody on the team. Like I can reach out and say, you know what, this is tough, and they understand and they're totally cool with it, and they try to do whatever they can to reduce stress. We have a very low amount of turnover at Infinite Red, especially tech in general.
Yeah.
Just a very yeah, and it's like it's normal for people to jump between jobs all the time, and for us, like we've been able to hang on to people by treating them like full human beings and not just who they are at work.
I love that. So last question before we hit up the lightning round.
All right.
The lightning round is 5 questions that have nothing to do with tech. It's the first thing that pops in your head. I keep points in my head and judge you, but then I don't tell you what I think. So, so before we get there, the final thing I want to ask is, so we talked about open source, what it is, being involved, contributing to libraries, and then I kind of move the conversation to leadership. What does that look like? So my final question to you is like, let's kind of merge the two, right? So if you're leading an open source team and you mentioned that isn't getting paid, I want you to dive into that a little bit. How do you lead from that perspective? So break that down, and we'll finish on this, and then we'll dive into the lightning round.
Well, I think that first off, you have to be thinking in terms of what is actually why would someone even be motivated to join the team? Why are they here? Understanding that is the first step toward understanding what motivates them. Money doesn't always motivate people. It's kind of interesting. Like money, you want to have enough money to be comfortable and not feel like you're, struggling, and that you can achieve your personal goals and stuff like that. And of course, everybody always wants more money. There's no, nobody's going to turn it down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, once you hit a certain point, there are other things that can be fulfilling in life. And being a part of a community, sort of being like pursuing, I find respect is a big thing, like respecting your abilities and respecting your contributions is a big motivator. People maybe don't feel like they get that at their current job, but when they go to open source, they get those feelings because people really look up to them because they're a maintainer of a particular project that's popular or cool or whatever. The ability to kind of create something that doesn't necessarily demand all of their time, but it conveys a certain amount of prestige or something along those lines. Other people just like working on code with other smart programmers, and they just really enjoy it. You can get that at a job for sure, but usually there are other pressures where open source tends to remove a lot of the extra pressures. Time frame usually isn't an issue. There aren't product people making decisions that are based on things other than what you want to do on the code. It's like as pure coding as you can kind of get, really.
I love talking some of my friends that are, and then especially around open source, where there's no deadline on it, you're just kind of creating, right? It's a very creative, artistic process, to go through that, craft, right? Yeah. And it hits another chord, in that same line. Yeah.
It does. It really does. It's hard. It's really hard to explain the feeling. But it's fantastic when you can, when you can be a part of something like that. So once you understand the motivations, then you also understand, what they care about, and you can kind of address those things in an authentic way. You're not like trying to manipulate them or anything. It's literally, these are the things you care about. Well, this is how that aligns with our vision for this open source project. Something like Ignite. Just recently, we've been having some trouble getting contributions to Ignite, and I know why. I figured it out. It's because it's too complicated to contribute. When there's a separate CLI, and then there's a boilerplate, and you can have multiple boilerplates, and there's plugins, and there's all these different, you can customize in different ways. So I was finally like, okay, I talked with Gant. I talked with some other key people at Infinite Red, including Brian Stearns, who's a fantastic developer. He's been doing this for a long time, 40 years now. He worked on the original Macintosh with Steve Jobs and stuff. So,
sick brag.
What's that?
Yeah. Sick brag.
Yeah. This dude knows what he's doing, and yet for some reason he loves working on our open source, and he works with us on projects and stuff. So, so it's fantastic having him as a resource. And between sort of this discussion with the team, it kind of came out that, okay, we don't need all of these features. Like a lot of these features aren't really being used, and not to the degree justifying the amount of complexity. So I started a brand new rewrite of Ignite, at least the CLI portion, reintegrated the boilerplate right into the same repo, and just simplified the whole thing. It's called Ignite Flame. I'm going to be doing some testing on it stuff, but it should come out by the end of the year, I would say. And Ignite Flame basically simplifies it to the point where anybody can just jump in there. If they know React Native, they can make a change, they can test it, and they can submit a pull request pretty easily. I want to make it so that there's documentation, like how do I submit a pull request for this? It just walks you through all of that stuff. So by investing very deeply into those things and removing a lot of the friction, you can get back to that kind of joy of just contributing and being recognized and having that, all those things. And so that kind of goes back to that question that you had, where how do you motivate people? Well, remove roadblocks, address the things they really care about, talk about the things where they're the things that motivate them are aligned with your vision, and people will respond to that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Real quick, we got a great question from Elliot, and then we'll wrap it up. Elliot
Right,
said,
sweet.
"I'm working with some guys right now. We complement each other well, and I'd love to work with them long term. How are you able to develop the relationships to partner into a company together and keep it thriving?"
Yeah, that's a great question, Elliot. And Elliot and I have been connected on Twitter for a long time. So, hey, dude, that's a great question. So I think one thing is that we put a lot of effort into our relationship early on. And we still do that to this day. We have, with a few exceptions, we've met every week, multiple times a week, just us. And we don't put like an agenda in place. So Gant, for example, he bought in as an owner like afterward. And when he came in, like one of the things that we sort of had, anytime you add someone, it changes the dynamic a little bit. He's like, okay, what's the agenda? Let's get through this stuff. And it was like, no, yeah, actually part of this is like, we don't even do the agenda sometimes, like we might have some stuff to talk about, but sometimes it's okay to just talk about our lives for 2 hours. It's okay. Because the most existential threat we have is if we have a falling out, and that would destroy the company faster than, anything really, if we just didn't get along. So we need to do that. And to his credit, Gant is super good at that. Like he's really good at like, how's it going? How can I support you? All those things. And Todd is too. And so we've just had this great relationship, but it doesn't happen by accident. And you might feel like, we don't need to talk to, this week, and you may not need to. But if you do that too many times in a row, you start accruing this like relationship debt almost.
Where relationship too.
that too, yes. But you have to kind of get to a level where when you're making decisions, you've talked about how you think about things so often that your partners aren't double, kind of like what's the word I'm thinking of? They're questioning, I guess, your judgment or something. Yeah. It's just you have that level of trust because you've just built it over time by all that effort.
That's right. Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. All right. So Jamon, thanks again for hopping on with us, man. It was
absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Before we wrap it up, 5 questions.
Okay. Hit me
I need like a pew pew pew, like lightning round type thing. All right. So first question, because you're on the coast, beach or mountains?
Beach. Yeah. Although I will say I've been doing a lot of hiking lately, so I do love the mountains. But
that sounds terrible. Hiking sounds awful.
You know what? I hated it too, but anyway, I've been doing a lot more of it, and I've actually been enjoying a lot. I'm a beach guy though.
Thank you. Yes.
So next question, little holiday theme from here on out.
Okay.
Favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
You know what? My mom makes this. I think it's my mom. Actually, you know what? I don't know. Like usually it's all spread out, so I don't know who brought what, but and I know my wife makes this. So I'll say my wife. My wife makes this great broccoli salad thing with like bacon in it and stuff like that. I'm sure you've probably had something like that.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And yeah, I go for that.
I love that. Favorite Christmas song?
Christmas song.
It doesn't have to be like, just anything holiday related Christmas song.
I don't know. I get so sick of Christmas songs so quickly. Just so many that just don't. You know what? I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head. I do like some Christmas songs. I'll probably think of one after this.
All right.
Yeah, you're gonna need to shout us out with a tweet when you wake up at 3 a.m. saying it was all over for Christmas.
3 a.m. Tweet me, hey Taylor. Yeah, it's Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
Yeah, right.
Turkey or ham for Thanksgiving?
Ham. I'm definitely a ham guy. Not just because of my name though. My name means ham in Spanish.
It does.
Really?
Yeah, jamon. But of course you don't say it that way, Jamon. But
that's awesome.
If we were friends, I would call you Ham though. So just
why not? People do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, somebody said the Mariah Carey Christmas song.
Yes. Okay, David. Yeah, That's David. He's from France.
Winter is coming.
David. Yes.
Final question. Favorite just holiday tradition you do with the family, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or first of the year or whatnot?
Thanksgiving is definitely probably my favorite holiday in general. It's right near my birthday. I love being around family. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be turning 39. And I just love being around people. So my mom's family often will get together. We'll just get together in a in a hall or something, or a church or something like that, and we just hang out. And my mom's family is really, really fun to hang out with.
Cool.
And of course my wife's family and my dad's family. It's just a lot of good relatives that I like to hang out with. So
that's important.
That's really my big thing. I like being around people. Of course, this year it's probably not going to happen. But
that's a whole nother, we can have that whole other conversation too. But
I know. Yeah.
I love that, man. Well, Jamon, thanks again for tuning in, man. I appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch. Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Taylor. Appreciate it, and Jake as well. Nice to meet you.
See you, everybody.